Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Leading with Light. Another morning where we talk about life and leadership. Today we are talking about the shadow side. And so I want to welcome everyone that has joined us as we continue our series on the struggles, the invisible patterns, habits, weights, and challenges that leaders have to contend with. Last week, we looked at a number of things that we will be looking at today. For those who don't know me, as usual, let me make it clear who I am. For those who don't know me, I am Dr. Marcia Thomas. I'm a Christian leadership consultant, life and career coach. And I'm also a best-selling author and a motivational speaker. And I help persons with their dissertation as a coach to carry them from the start of their dissertation to their successful finish. Today, we're talking about the shadow side of leadership, uncovering hidden patterns as we continue our discussion. So let's talk about this topic, and let us go. My quote for today that I want you to think about, and that will be the pillar of this discussion, is that every leader has a light they operate from. Every leader has a light that they operate from, but they also have a shadow that can quietly shape their decisions. And so we want to dig into that today just a little. We want to dig into that. All right, so I want to welcome those who have joined. Thank you for joining, Leslie. Good morning. Doc, good to have you. And also, Nicole, thanks for joining. And so we are going to move this morning with the fact, a very important fact. And I want us to think about it because I keep saying, as I do this series on the invisible weights that leaders carry, that I'm speaking to high performing leaders. That's one. And I'm also appealing to Christian career professionals and leaders. And so every one of us, whether we are secular leaders or Christian leaders, have a light, but we also have a shadow. And the point of the matter is, you can be gifted, you can be an achiever, and you can be deeply committed to your purpose, yet unknowingly live out of patterns that sabotage your leadership. And a lot of leaders who fail have those issues right there. So let's talk about it. What is the shadow side? We want to understand the shadow side. And I want to put my screen right there so everybody sees what I'm talking about. Understanding the shadow side. What does the shadow side of leadership really means? I want to say that every leader casts a shadow. Sometimes these shadows are the strengths we don't yet see. And then clearly other times, there are the hidden patterns that quietly drain or influence or cloud our decision or make us distance ourselves from our purpose, the one that God has placed inside of us. So that is the unspoken side of leadership, is the shadow side, that part of our leadership style, that ingrained response, that self-protection, the habits and routines and patterns that we follow as we lead ourselves and lead others, and that inner narrative that shape our decisions without us realizing it. And one of them is fear. And I love this. It could be a nice book topic, Dr. Leslie, The Light of Faith and the Shadow of Fear. So fear as a shadow is very important. And faith is also very important. So a leader, for example, whose shadow is really faith, will find him or herself making positive decisions and always in a positive mindset and learning the lesson from everything and seeing the good in everything, the fear, and that person tends to carry an optimistic personality because your emotions, your movement, and your language calls the universe into partnership with you. And so the negative side of that is fear. If fear is your shadow, then you tend to be more pessimistic. You find a problem for every solution, and you find yourself wallowing a lot in self-doubt and self-sabotage. So persons who have faith as their shadow tend to lift and carry light, and others on the fear side tend to self-sabotage. Very important that we understand that. So you might find that these patterns may appear to be harmless, these hidden patterns in our personality that influence our behavior are often formed by our past experiences, our fears, or our unhealed wounds. So we might find that we keep saying yes. Example is you have persons who keep saying yes, always saying yes, to avoid conflict or to, how would I put it now, delay decisions that they feel would put them at risk or would displease people, or because they fear failure. And that in itself is a hidden pattern that they might not even recognize in themselves, because they are hiding behind what they think are wise decisions, reasonable decisions, collaborative decisions. But that in itself is self-sabotaging. We looked at that last week. And so they may even seem to be wise or harmless. It's just, it's to preserve my peace. It's to give me, it's to keep me preserved. It's self-preservation. But over time, what we find is that these things constantly take us from our purpose, distance us from our purpose. Let's look at the other side of it. You might have a leader who, or a CEO, or an entrepreneur, meaning those who are running their business with a very small staff, macromanages, not because their staff is not capable, but because they are so afraid of failure from a past project. They have something to prove to someone. So they tell themselves that they are protecting their vision. They feel that they're protecting their vision. But what they're really afraid of doing is delegating. So these patterns can actually feel safe, and they can actually appear to be purposeful, but they quietly choke the motivation in others. It quietly makes you self-sabotage because it breeds disgruntlement. It also makes persons feel undervalued or underappreciated, and it can make this person highly critical. So it creates tense relationships, and it can affect the well-being. All right. Thanks for joining, Nicole. How are you? And thanks for joining, Charito. Good evening. And I see you, Lisa. Nice to have you. All right. So, Dr. Leslie, you are saying that they don't know what they don't know. Not yet. Very good point. Let's put it there, because if it is hidden, and I said last week, you cannot acknowledge or address what you don't know or you don't see. But it can quietly choke you, and it can become your leader's landmine or your death sentence. So that's it. Proverbs 20 and verse 5 reminds us that the purposes of a person's heart are deep-seated, but one who has insights draws them out. Self-awareness is extremely important, and that is something I want us to understand. So the first question I am attempting to answer, that I am assuming that somebody will be asking in my audience, is what are some patterns that high capacity leaders might miss in themselves? And I say perfectionism. And this can be disguised as wanting to be excellent, the top of your game, wanting to stand out, wanting to be exceptional or exemplary. And so you have this perfectionist streak that you disguise as excellence, but it's really perfectionism that tends to drive or lead to, weariness or burnout. And then you have overcommitting, which we disguise as service. This, yes, saying yes all the time, moving forward to persons, not wanting to disturb the things. And so we have to become aware of when we are giving service as against when we are overcommitting, when it is a perfectionist streak that is driving us or haunting us, destroying our relationships, choking motivation and creativity and innovation out of persons, and causing disgruntlement. We also have avoidance, which is disguised as patience. So we are procrastinating, we are tolerating, we are fighting for consensus under the pretense that we are being patient, but we are really avoiding doing things to disturb your comfort zone or what you believe or perceive to be your productivity zone. You're not doing evaluations and you're not having meetings with persons to iron out a crisis or serious issues. You're doing other things, giving it time in your mind. But if we dig down hard enough, if that is a pattern, the pattern of patience can point to a laissez-faire leader or someone that's not doing a good job, someone who does not have an handle. And for those who would want to feel that it is someone who is introverted, the introverted leaders are most, as is the case for extroverted leaders, are excellent and high performing, and they get their deadlines met, they get on well with persons. They are just not loving the spotlight, or they are just not in the exhibitionist mode, and they don't shout and they don't parade and they don't pull to their achievements and highlight themselves as much as extroverted leaders. But they do not necessarily practice the avoidance either. They have a quieter and a more strategic way of dealing with things. And then there can be control disguised as stewardship, which is very different from perfectionism, where you dot every I and cross every T, perfectionism. And you make people feel unintentionally and sometimes intentionally that they are not good enough, or that they are not stepping up to the plate, or that something is wrong with them because they are nonchalantly going about and achieving very capably what they are supposed to do. And then, so control is different from perfectionism. Control, which is disguised as stewardship, is where persons are micromanaged to the extent where every single decision has to go through persons, although these persons are heads of their department and are capable, high functioning themselves, and get what is to be done. They buy into the vision and they delegate and they test people to see what they can produce. But in a setting where there's a pattern of control, every single thing has to run by one person at all times. That is what we talk about when we talk about control, which is this guys as. So let us look at pattern one. Pattern one can refer to overcompensation. So how does overcompensation, what does it look like? Overworking, over-delivering, saying yes to everything. What happens when we overwork ourselves to prove a point to someone, or to prove someone wrong as a leader, or to avoid dealing with the personal issues in our lives, like going home, so we leave early and we come back home late? What happens? It really appears as overworking and over delivering and saying yes to everything, of course, to keep the peace and to, according to you, self-preserve and to be the bigger person. A lot of persons overwork themselves, over deliver, and say yes because in their minds they are being the bigger person. But of course, they are burnt out. They lack focus because when a weary or burnt out person, focus becomes as diminished as a person who takes drugs or drinks before driving, consume a certain amount of alcohol before driving. So the focus is no longer strategic. And we are to understand that this has happened over time to many persons, and we have long-standing proof from history coming back, even in the Bible, where Martha was so busy serving that God said to her, you're missing the one thing that is needed and what is important: rest, self-reflection, connection, meaningful connection, the internal alignment that we need as leaders to understand who we are, why we are called, and who has called us and commissioned us to do the work that we are doing. So I keep saying that persons are good at their role, but they are not understanding their purpose. And that is why some people fight to pour into callings in their workplace through promotions and undermine others to pour into callings that were never given to them. Because you cannot be released from any job until God has released you. No CEO or so can't just displace you. And that's why sometimes so many CEOs and so try to displace you, but you, for some reason, they have the glitches that they are not understanding. They drill down and they get more upset and they get angry. And sometimes they get to the point where they undermine you in so many ways. And yet, when they are called to book and when there is an evaluation, you do not fail it. And they themselves cannot understand it. And you yourself feel all of what is happening. And you wonder how you keep going. It's because you cannot be released unless God releases you. So you must understand your why, and you must press into your why. Your why gives you focus and gives you power, a superpower, and it gives you also resilience. It makes you very resilient because you learn the lessons and you understand the innovations that are happening, and you know how to play because you are meeting the universe and all the negatives that are coming in stride, because you are self-aware and you understand your assignment and your mission, and you continue to inspire, grow, and impact people. Because sometimes the persons you are sent to serve are not persons you would desire to serve. And we have Jonah as an example. We have Moses as an example. We have Joseph as an example. Sometimes the people you are sent to serve would not have been your first choice. But God understands that whatever lessons and whatever pruning, whatever growth they need, whatever saving, that is your assignment. That's the problem you were created to solve. That's why you exist. And sometimes you are placed in families to do the very work. So your job is great and everything is what the issues come from your family. Persons who are ungrateful are in your family. Persons who are not supportive are in your family. And so there are some persons who say they get so much support from persons outside of their friendship group or their family. It is because that's not your calling. They are not supposed to, because you're supposed to bring them out of their selfishness and unkind spirits and nature and the patterns of using people to meet their own ends. And they do it to family members also. And so we have to understand that. I see you, Diana. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith, for joining. They become reactive and disconnected, very much so. They become reactive and disconnected, very much so. All right, so we want to look at the next pattern that is usually established with those things that we use as our shadow side, the avoidance. I spoke about that just, so I highlighted them and now I'm digging into them. Now the avoidance comes up as procrastination. on hard conversations, on delegating critical decisions because we don't want to avoid discomfort. And it also shows up as not disturbing persons. So it shows up as making the popular decisions instead of the right ones. And so it results in team confusion, loss of respect, and loss of trust. And Jonah found himself in that position when he ran from his assignment. And I wanted that to sink in just a little. Thanks for this, Nicole. Thank you so much for this. I have faith that what is planned for me will happen. I also agree with you. In a former position, I know I tried the president's patience very much, but he saw my value in executing and team building. I left it. It was time. Several coworkers reached out after to say that my impact is still felt. My job there was done. Yes, we must understand when our assignment is up so that we don't keep opening doors that God has or pushing doors that God has slammed shut. Very important point there, Nicole. So sometimes the pattern we have is that we are not able to see when there's time for change or when our assignment is completed and when God is moving us on. And sometimes he has to drag us out. Believe me, I know. Because sometimes you feel that the persons you're serving can't do without you, when in fact they themselves have moved on because they have pushed on. You have to understand that and stop pushing. And so there are some persons who are in an organization and they get very disgruntled and they get very angry and disillusioned because people keep coming into the organization that they have to train. What's your assignment? What is God doing? What does he want you to do? What is the solution he wants you? Because that's a pattern. But we get so angry that we begin to lose ourselves and we begin to lead without soul because we are fighting for something that God has not prepared for us. He has prepared us for greater. And these persons who appear to be coming in there to destroy your plan and your worth and to steal your birthright, sing your praises in such a way that they are recommending you to greater positions, but because you feel that your navel string is in that organization, that is what you were created to be, leader of that organization, you are not able to recognize that where you are being sent, where you're being recommended is a greater position because you're not aware of your purpose. You're focusing on your role and you're very good at it, but you're missing your purpose because where you are is preparation ground. Once you have been prepared and God is ready to move you out, some of us become so comfortable and carry that illusion and have that productivity illusion and are so hinged on accolades and external validation that we don't realize that we are being lifted out. And then because we don't do that, we place our purpose, we stagnate our purpose, we place it in dormancy, we derail it, and then we have to be carried out. Rami, see you there. The lack of personal reflection and retrospective work gives room for avoidance. Very much so. And that's really where I'm going. That's where I'm going with the solutions and the strategies. So the next pattern that I'm digging into is we want to ask, do you say yes too often because saying no feels like failure, even when it costs you your peace? We want to understand that side of it. All right. So let's look at the next pattern, perfectionism. And remember that we say perfectionism is different from control. We just looked at that. So it appears as high standards. You're masking your fear of criticism. So the perfectionist streak appears. This is how it shows up. This is how it looks, as a high standard, and you mask your fear of criticism. But what is impact on your team, on your organization, on you? It's stalled innovation. You come out as very unsure, very uncertain, and very anxious in your teams, instead of looking as if you have it all together. with the perfectionist streak. So you're thinking that because you mask it as excellence and you're dotting every I and crossing every T, that you are now seen as somebody in charge, in control, and as somebody who strives on excellence, because there's a difference. A person who strives on excellence understands that leadership is dynamic, it's not static, and that it is very dependent on your team emotions, your team's movement, and the language of your team. And that's why many persons misunderstand motivation. Of course, if you want to dig into it, you can purchase a copy of my book, A Leader Like You. And so that fear of criticism, of judgment, and we dug into it so well last week with Dr. Leslie, which we were going to be doing another one soon. It stalls your creativity and that of your team and your innovation. Of course, I say people are now anxious. There is a lack of trust. There is the feeling that they are not valued or appreciated. There is the feeling also of disgruntlement that becomes very silent. And it's all because we're seeking approval from people instead of seeking approval from God. And I used to say, as a leader in my organization, which gave me a certain amount of autonomy, that I really don't fear man, I fear God, because he's really the final judge. And because my mantra will always be that you must be true to yourself, so you can't be false to any man. I had an issue because my affirmation has to be that the greatest want of men are men who cannot be bought or sold, men who are true to duty as a needle to the pole, men who in their innermost soul are true and honest, will stand for truth though the heavens fall. That is what carries me through life. It will not change. And sometimes when you are very sure and absolute, and your core values, your beliefs, your emotions, and your actions are in accordance, don't expect that persons who your life reprimands by just how you live, or people who are standing up for what they believe, are crowned or appreciated. They are most often, as Nick had said, the impact is felt when the person leaves the organization and persons realize what they have lost. And many times persons embrace the values. Those who have regret or those who understood it embrace those values and now bear the aftermath or the blunt of what you were experiencing, simply because you were one person who decided to stand for truth though the heavens fall, to make right decisions, and to be true to yourself so you can't be false to any man, and who carried their core values into everything that they were doing, and it was the sum total of their character. I have a book that I'm developing immediately after My Faith Looks Out that talks about the leader's seeds. And I have 7 seeds that I say a leader must possess. A Christian leader who is in a secular workplace. These are the seeds I believe, in my experience that I've gathered, and in my coaching with clients who are leaders, that we must carry forward. So that will come after My Faith Looks Up. And I must pause here to say I will give you the date for my book launch, which would be virtual and online, and also the link for your pre-ordering. As we move, you will get that very, very soon, because we are sorting that out. For those who don't know it, it is on screen. My Faith Looks Up, and it is really rekindling your faith and your hope and purpose as a leader. It's really a devotional guide. And so far, the reviews are good in relation to the test group, the pilot group that it has been sent to. All right, so let's go back right here. And we want to talk about now how we deal with this. How do we deal with the shadow side of leadership? How can we recognize the shadow side before it sabotages us? I say there are 2 ways, and Ramin, you did come up with that. So good to have you, and all the suggestions and all the points that persons are making here. I appreciate it so much. The self-awareness, the personal reflection and retrospects is where it is. And I have it on screen there. Self-awareness plus feedback. And one of the feedback must come from God. So one of the texts that I use and that I'm recommending is, search me, O God, and know my heart. See if there is any offensive way in me so that I can make that change. Self-awareness. Feedback. Very important. So you must be prepared to listen to wise peers. So you must ask trusted peers to share how they experience you under stress. Because character shows up under stress. When we ask the hard questions of ourselves, because sometimes it's difficult to ask hard questions, and when we invite God to show us who we really are, and the difference between walking in, what would I call it now? The difference between walking in his strength versus our shadow, we are able to understand where we are. Self-awareness now drives us to reflection, objective reflection, where we become critical of our own selves. And we look at the man in the mirror and we begin to look at how we are penning out in the different settings, especially under stress. All right. Then you want to look for repeated frustrations. What keeps happening in your leadership? What keeps happening? Because the fact of the matter is that leaders make decisions that affect lives. Leaders, whether it is self-leadership, whether it's in your home or in your community or in your organization, leaders make decisions that affect lives. Agree or disagree? Leaders make decisions that affect organizations. Agree or disagree? The organization might be the home, it might be your workplace, it can be your community. Agree or disagree? And also, the unchecked patterns, which is what makes it so dangerous, can derail your vision and also your integrity. It can derail your vision and also your integrity. Do you know that there's a text in the Bible that says persons will accuse you, but make sure that when they do it, they will accuse you falsely? If we look at all the examples of the accusations that were placed against God himself, even to the point of crucifying him, let's look at the accusations that were made against Joseph. And I pause here because I'm saying spiritual things are discerned spiritually. We have to understand when it is a purposeful, divine purpose change or transition or move, as against when it is self-sabotage. Because sometimes we make decisions that sabotage us, but we think also that it is the universe sending us messages. But it's really us pouring into callings that were never ours in the beginning. All right. We also want to pay attention to our energy leaks. When do you feel drained or defensive? When do you feel combative, sorry. When you explore those patterns, things that are happening over and over, when you look at the themes, you will now be able to see what triggers you, something that I commonly say, and how you trigger others. And you will be able to bring your shadow into light. Those shadow patterns that are sabotaging you, that you're not realizing are sabotaging you in your relationships, in your homes. And these things, your energy leaks comes up even with how you are dealing with your children. So you can see how your children, what about dealing with your children drains you or puts you combative or in the defensive, so that you don't listen to them, so that you become an obsolete or so on. What's a perfectionist streak in you that is driving them? What's a control streak or index that drives them? What are the avoidance that you do in your relationships with your spouses, your teammates, and so on? What keeps happening? What are your repeated frustrations? I'm pulling on those because those are very important. What if that side of perfectionism though not pleasant to everyone, but at the end of the day is what is needed to steer the group to success. But if that is so, if the perfectionism is something that you are saying is needed, and it is really to steer the group to success, it's not perfectionism. It's accountability. And accountability is different from perfectionism. Because as we say before, you're dotting I's and T's in a very destructive way. You are condescending to persons. You pull them down. You make them, you destroy their self-worth and their innovation and creativity. That's the perfectionist side of it. The accountability is making people double check and making people evaluate and critically think about the aspect of what they are supposed to do and how it contributes or distorts the whole. When you pull people to be accountable, you make them test themselves to see what they can produce, and you allow them to make mistakes and make them see the consequences, because every action has a equal reaction or a consequence. That will make you also understand where persons are when you do that. And so your delegation will be strategic, and not because so much of years of service, but because of competence and expertise, which you might just need for that project or particular, it might just be a project, it might just be an assignment, it might just be a direction in which you want to go. So the best action to address it would be that you identify accountability over perfectionism, and that you focus on people and their skills and what they need and what type of support, as against drilling down to make them meet deadlines, which is what is one of the mistakes we make very often. So we focus on that. We start there, Charito. I hope that answered you. We start right there, focusing on what the needs are, because sometimes our expectations of people are based on their positions, but we are not looking clearly at what is their pattern, what their shadows are, what their repeated frustrations are, what are their energy leaks. And we, as leaders, we need to do that also. It's a greater responsibility that is put on us when we stand out, or when we are in the position where we are to make persons become masters of their own destiny, because that's what really leadership is. It's not getting people to do what you want them to do. It's getting people to do what they ought to do based on their core values and how they see themselves and how they tie in and bring to, and what they bring to bear on your organization. One aspect of it is their expertise. The next aspect is their competence. The next is their mindset. And the next is actually how their emotions, language, and movement is very important. If leaders pay attention to those things, then they are able to help persons, even if those persons eventually leave your organization. And I know from experience, I have many persons of an organization that I have left, that I had guided in a path that I say this would serve you, it will bring out the best in you. If you do this, this would be yours because you're so good at this, and so on. And many are giving me success reports that I'm thanking God for. Success report, and they're saying it. Do you remember when you told me this? I'm reaping the results. I'm so happy. I'm so comfortable. Some of them are my clients. I have clients who came to me, did not understand. They pulled out the shadow, what I call the shadow side. I'm doing a post with that very soon. And out of the shadow side, she did not get on well with people. Her repeated frustrations show that she did not get on well with persons because she did not take criticism very well, and instructions also. And because she was really more innovative and free-spirited, as against where she was, that required her to be extremely structured. And I find that I have two grown children, my son and my daughter. And my son does not do well in structured, compressed places. He does better in roles where he's able to innovate, be creative, and problem solve. So prescriptive roles don't work well for him. He manages, but it doesn't. My daughter believes in a structure. I think she's more on the perfectionist side. So she believes in a structure, and she believes that things are really supposed to be done. And she might have gotten that from the perfectionist side in me, because I've been told many times that I'm a perfectionist. But persons who I have learned over the years, and thankfully, thank God, what is the difference? And I have made people more accountable than doing it my way, because sometimes expertise can make you know that this is a proven strategy. This is how it is done if you deviate. And in the nature of education, there are certain methodologies and so on that require you to be on target in that way. And so that may have slipped over into my personal life. But when you balance it, I balance it by recognizing what triggers me, what are my energy leaks, what are my repeated frustrations. And I handpick my trusted peers, and choose persons who are not afraid to tell me the truth lovingly. So that is what is out there as very important. So I might have spent a lot of time there. So we want to look at the tool, the first tool of self-awareness that I feel, and of course I say I, because that I feel will work, and that is your purpose alignment check. I'm all about purpose as a Christian leadership consultant and coach, because I find that if individuals do not have this compelling vision that I call purpose, then they find that they are going on as what I would call on a treadmill, but they are not ending up anywhere. So they are good at their role, they are getting achievements, they are doing so many things, but there is still this lack of fulfillment, this gap, working very hard, but you're not happy. Or you're working very, very hard, doing 2 jobs, getting many more certificates and so on. But the certificate that you must the school you must now graduate from is your purpose. You must leave there pressing into your purpose. Life is built up of your purpose. Before you were born, God knew you, and He established your path. Your divine life script is what I call it. And whatever would be yours should be yours. And that's why I say some persons on their dying bed say, if I had my life to do over, I am sure this is what I would want to do. And those who are able say and give it to other persons to fulfill that legacy. So they provide the means through an inheritance or through a fund or a foundation, and they say, this is what I would want you to do. Because for the 80 years that they lived, their purpose was in dormancy. Or I say there are some persons who parents, okay, pour into them. They appear to be doctors, very popular, and lawyers. But after they graduate and are in practice for a year or two, they actually leave that and go into something else, like a business that annoys people. Why would you leave becoming a doctor and open a business? A business, by the way, that the person becomes extremely successful in, and is also able to steer people and help them using the expertise that he had through his training to become a doctor, or her training to become a doctor, to bring to bear successfully in this business and do greater than what he or she would have done, have the peace and the happiness and joyful work that they really wanted, and leave those who had those high expectations of what it would mean to them and how it would externally validate them, wondering. And some are very disappointed. They talk about it for years because this is their dream. So when you're self-aware and you're doing your purpose alignment check, by the way, you can get a free report by just clicking the link on my profile and doing your purpose alignment audit. You'll get a response that tells you where you are on your purpose journey and what you need to do. And I give you at least 4 steps in my free model to start the progress. And I say, if you want to move forward now, you'll schedule a call, discovery or a breakthrough session, and we work from there. So the question you want to ask yourself is, does this decision align with my God-given assignment, or is it meeting a personal fear or need? And this is why I put these on these things so persons can really know and understand, because it's a popular request that persons have asked, that I put it on a slide so they can always go back to it. So that's the first tool, your purpose alignment checklist. The next one is your accountability circle. You must build trusted relationships that can call out blind spots. definite purpose, which is the of course, to the principles of success. Thank you, Dr. Leslie, very much so. And I have put it on the screen because that's what it is, your definite purpose. And definite purpose is what builds a legacy. It's what is serving your purpose. All of us have the same purpose, to serve with our unique gifts and our talents. So all of us end up the same place, leaving a legacy because we have served unreservedly from our using our unique talents and our gifts that have been given to us. And that points us to why we were created and the issue we were created to solve, or what we were created to do. All right. So we want to go there, build the trusted relationships that can call out your blind spots. And I'm saying, if you must having that group, as I said before, and those of you who have not, you can go back to the 2 programs from here on YouTube. It's right there, and also on LinkedIn, where we say you must have your mentors and persons who share your core values. You must also have your allies in the thing that we call your peer group. You must have persons who have been there, done that. So there are several persons that you need in your accountability circle. All right. So you must strategically place yourself in relationships where persons can stretch you. That's what I'm really saying. They can build you and they can pull you into your purpose while supporting you. Very important. And in the next tool, and I've put it for last, but not because it is least, because I want to leave it in your mind. I want it to be left in your mind. You must have a faith-centered reflection, which includes daily prayer and meditation. And I'm recommending Psalm 139, 23 to 24 as a leadership filter. And I'm not going to say what it is here because I really want you to go and look if you're a leader. All right. And then we want to look at, how can I now move from my shadow into my purpose alignment? How can I move from my shadow into my perfect alignment? We want to look at that. All right. So we want to look at all of that. The first thing I want to say is that you must name it. Admit the pattern with no shame. Because some of us feel guilty because we are human. We want to admit the pattern with no shame. Admit the pattern with no shame. I'm repeating it and repeating it because some of us have this guilt that we carry, and we feel that when we become self-aware, we can't forgive ourselves for certain things, or a lot of regret. But naming it means that it's now brought to the forefront and you can now address it. And that's where I want to take you to, addressing it. So you're going to swap that false belief with a truth rooted in God's word, and also your experience, and also your resilience. Because if you are still here, it means that you have either come through or you have overcome. If you have overcome or you have come through, it means that you can now stand confidently and look back and learn the lesson. So it means that you are now operating in the presence with that power of what you have come through or overcome, and what you are now enabled to do or prepared to do tomorrow. Because you are now armed and dangerous. You have that knowledge and you have that power that you have come through and that you're a survivor. So you now have what I call a warrior's mindset, which really is a mindset that says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I now know why and my how. And so I'm going to move forward very focused and very intentional and very purposeful. So you're not looking to no left nor no right, because you have got enough confirmation in your heart, based on the themes, based on the patterns, based on identifying your energy leads, where you are standing. and where you want to go. So you begin to become the person that you were created to be. And then you start to practice. You create small intentional changes in how you lead yourself, your family, in your workplace, and in your community. That means that you can be leading with confidence. You're leading with what I call leadership surrender. When you understand your purpose, you serve from that place of internal alignment. You are using the proven strategy, which comes from your experiences, your mistakes, your failures, your enlightenment, your discernment, your gut feeling, and your affirmations. Because there are things that you can now create your own affirmations because of what you have gone through and what you have done. So you can intentionally trust in yourself. You can intentionally release trust in yourself. That's practice. Trust in God, how far He has carried you and how high His thought is for you, His ideal. You are now able to release His ideal in your life, in your situation, in your circumstances. So your truth now becomes God works through progress, not perfection. You now become flexible. And your overtime is now centered on your light and not the shadow. And your faith replaces the fear. And so you move on. A lot of this is very visible in my book. My faith looks up. And I say no, faith illuminates the shadows you're willing to bring into the light. And I want us to soak that in as I wind down quickly. Faith illuminates the shadows you're willing to bring into the light. And that is a quote from the book. So I have some reflection questions here for you now. And my reflection questions is, how has this pattern impacted your leadership? What is your pattern, that you now need to recognize and change? What's the pattern? What's the frustrations? What's the energy leaks that you need to pinpoint and bring out into the open name? And you want to identify how this pattern impacted your leadership or is impacting your leadership or your relationships, and you want to replace it. And what is the faith-based action that you can take this week to address it? Because we want to address it and we want to practice that action. All right? So we want to make sure that we complete this challenge that I'm giving and leaving with you. You take 5 minutes after this live to reflect on where you feel tension between your values and your daily leadership decisions. And what have you been calling strength that might actually be self-protection? That's your leadership challenge. Take 5 minutes after this live to reflect on where you feel tension between your values and your daily leadership decisions. And let's face it, man, it's time for us to be honest, especially persons over 40. You need to be honest, and you want to make sure that you look at identifying and pressing into your purpose. And if you have a difficulty moving in, of course, I say do your purpose audit. See where you are standing. Be honest with yourself and decide to make the change. What have you been calling strength? That might actually be self-protection. Is it avoidance? Is it control? Is it perfectionism? I'm just asking, because that's what we have touched. For those who came in late, you can just go back to the front. And so if the conversation resonates with you, I want you, and I am inviting you to go a little deeper. Complete your purpose alignment audit and get your free report. You get it immediately as you do the audit. And if you feel that you would want to uncover the hidden patterns and strengthen spiritual alignment and step fully into your God-given calling joyfully and profitably, then you can schedule your soul sync strategy session or your breakthrough, depending on what you want. I facilitate that. And then I also want you to, I'd love to work with you if that's where you are. So I would want you to DM alignment so we can work together to create a strategic divine plan to realign your leadership, your calling, and your soul health for sustainable impact right now and beyond. All right. If you feel that you still would want to hesitate and still continue self sabotaging, then you can save yourself a little by pre ordering my new book, My Faith Looks Up. I want to end by saying your shadow doesn't have to define you. Your purpose really should, because it's your purpose that does it. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. And please remember that as a leader, you're a vessel and your soul matters. God is not calling you to lead on fumes, but on overflow. So I say, have a blessed Self Care Tuesday and see you next week when we look at another topic, another hot topic, and another beneficial topic, because I'm hoping that this is benefiting us as leaders. I want to thank you, Leslie, for joining. I want to thank you, Nicole. I want to thank you so much, Sharita, Romin. I want to thank you, Franklin. I want to thank you, Simone, Nicole, Dr. Smith. I want to thank you, Lisa. I want to thank you, Charito. And I also want to thank all those who will be listening to the replay. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Paula. All of you who have taken the time out to join. I have 3 minutes to go. So I am out of here. And again, I'll see you next week. God bless and much love.